So I can imagine that there may be some applications in the European countries are governed in one way, in China another, and in US there's another. But at the same time, we also have some common risks that really, I think, threatens the existence of human beings. I think Chinese regulations was adaptive, more context-dependent, specific, as compared to the European regulation, we actually have a much umbrella, more broader regulations. But I think certainly in terms of comparing with their U.S. Counterpart, probably our Chinese companies probably say they have much more regulations under them for the use. China actually has a very well-developed system to regulate AI companies. I think indeed, it generates a lot of benefits. The Chinese companies are subject to many specific regulations to ensure that the risks of their application will be minimized and mitigated. Chinese companies can do whatever they want. If they may see that at the initial stage, indeed, for example, facial recognition was used somewhat widely, but now we see there's a much more limitations on the use of that. Facial recognition is in many cases there's a Chinese context actually provides actually more benefits of using, say, those technology. For example, if you think about very crowded train station, if you want to get through high volume passing through, and there I think that actually facial recognition could be better than human checks. But even now, I think also that's already being changed. You no longer need facial recognition. So I think, first of all, I think there's indeed some use, and then you have more new regulations and that limit certain use that now being viewed as pervasive and make collecting data that people may not feel comfortable. So I think there's some adaptive evolution of Chinese regulations on the AI use. I think that both the government and the industry have a very clear sense, particularly the big companies. The real challenge is how to prevent so-called the AGI that's out of human control. So that is something that indeed Chinese academia have talked a lot about, and also government policy also have talked a lot about, and also now you have a lot of industrial so-called commitments that's provided by industrial associations. A big company they are signing up for those commitments. So I think there are indeed a very wide range of tools that's been used to regulate AI's applications. I've been trying to advocate for agile governance. I think the agile governance is really referring to the situation that technology moves very fast. As we see that almost like every day or every week, you see some new model, new progress is being made in AI. So technology moves very fast. However, I think for people who knows anything about the government, about regulations, about those things, that moves very, very slow. I mean, you have to first understand the situation and you draft something and to go through various consultation and then to debate, and then so that takes years. So by the time you came up with something, the technology has already moved. You're always playing this chasing game. So I think that's the challenge for something like AI. That's the situation we face. And the other thing is also because AI development is a new territory. When, for example, people are concerned about the AGI out of control, but nobody knows when that will happen, right? You wanted to explore, to push for the big model for AGI, but at the same time, at what point that becomes dangerous? So we've already, been trying to, I work with some people, technical people, and so I think defining some sort of red lines, but still, it's not easy. And so the first thing that after recognizing this limitations, we have to change our mindset of having this comprehensive, very covering everything, and to make sure that this not miss anything. We really have to tolerate incomplete kind of governance measures. So maybe we focus on this part. Maybe we're missing some other part, but let's go ahead. Try to get this out so that actually would provide some guidance to the industry. So I think that's probably the first thing. So you have to abandon the idea that you wanted to have a very complete set of the rules to cover everything that so that nobody can make any mistakes. That's probably going to be very hard. The second thing is that related to this, it's the kind of tools you use. You don't want to use those very harsh punishment because I think it's an evolving process. Could be mishaps in companies' innovation in some wrongly headed applications and so on. So you want to give them a signal, but not necessarily to punish them so hard so that it's very hard to innovate. The kind of tools you use will be somewhat differently. And the third thing I think is the relationship between the regulators and those being regulated. In the past, I think that the regulator is like a cat. Those being regulated is sort of like a mouse. The mouse is always trying to find wiggle, trying to find where are the holes that I can sort of pass through. The regulator like a cat. Okay, we're going to catch this mouse. If you're in that kind of a mindset, then it'd be very hard for the proper governance of the technology. The companies and the regulators, they need to have good communication. So the companies can say, okay, we're moving in this direction, and we don't know what kind of problem this might produce, but we have a hunch something might happen in this area. And the regulator can say, well, anything related to human lives and so on, that's a taboo. You can't do that. On the other hand, on some other things, that might be possible. So you want to convey what's the government concern, the degree of concerns, and then the company can say, okay, what are the potential risks? That communication, they can strike a balance of where they want to move the technology. And that's a win-win situation, because otherwise that the company might move in directions that actually is really worrisome to government. So the government actually to put a very harsh ban in that area, and so the entire area will no longer be able to develop it. So I think that communication is also crucial to jointly define what are the more safe areas to work on. Because I think the companies don't know when they move forward what are some of the potential risks. The government also don't know whether this is an area they can allow the company to move forward. So I think there's some kind of uncharted territory that they really have to work together to say, okay, how we can balance the innovation and the risk. In the Chinese papers we published, we call this joint ignorance. We can say we are all learning. I think in terms of joint ignorance, I think it's from different countries also. I'm sure that there are indeed a lot of things that China is doing. I think people outside China do not know, vice versa. So I think at least those are the three areas I think an agile governance approach might do better in this phase of the AI development. Right? I mean, it's use nudging rather than big stick. And by the way, I don't think we are going to have a totally consistent global governance on AI, because many of these AI applications are domestic, context specific. So I can imagine that there may be some applications in the European countries are governed in one way, in China another, and in US there's another. But at the same time, we also have some common risks that really, I think, threatens the existence of human beings. So those risks, and we have to work together. So we call that public good, AI safety as a global public good. I think it's those kind of risks, like the AI system out of control. I think we need to have global collaborations. Of course, we're also concerned about AI being used in the military and in the conflict situations. And there again, I think there's a need to be a global governing regime to make sure that indeed will not be put into those kind of situations. This is another thing I always like to use, and what I call the regime complex. I think for people who study global governance, and this is a term people use it very often, regime complex is referring to the situation that you have some critical issues of global governance. You are not short of regimes governing this issue, but you have too many. Many of these regimes they have some say on this. and they wanted to govern the data part, they want to govern the computing power, and so on. So you have many overlapping regimes. Some of them are, contradicting with one another, and some other are overlapping, and so on. Unfortunately, in these regimes, there's no hierarchical relationship. You can't say my regime is on top of yours. So that's the challenging situation for AI governance. So I think we all agree that indeed UN system is still, we can say, for the huge major challenge that like the AI out of control should be, it should be the major platform. But at the same time, what kind of protocols to connect, say if we're going to develop a verifying system and a system to check about the safety of the system, you may want to have some other international body with more technical capabilities, such as ITU and others. And some people also say we may have to create another more technically competent agency. So I think that at the moment, certainly, I think it's something yet to be defined. And actually, we're working, I'm working with some international colleagues, and we're producing something for UN and to serve as an umbrella for global governance. At the moment, I think in terms of platform, we have UN and we have this AI Summit series started in UK and in Seoul and now in Paris. So I think that's another platform, and we have UNESCO and some other international. So we are not short of platform, but we to have more enforceable kind of mechanism to ensure the safety of AI.